Take it away.
We'll need to log in as Wayne Bell, and I'll tell you when you get to it.
Okay.
eber.org. Okay, and then go to My eBird over at mid-left. There you go. It'll prompt you for the username, which is small caps, W-A-Y-N-E, small letters, W-A-Y-N-E, space, B-E-L-L. Great. Okay, then down here we want to go to trip reports on the left side under Manage My. There you go. Okay, great. And then we scroll down a little bit to field trip number 1. Just you're almost there. Chesapeake Farm field trip number 1. That's it
right there.
Yep. Okay, we're going to go through all 9. I'm just going to. This is what the trip report at eBird looks like. You can group. If we had more than one checklist, we can group them all together into one report. That's how I prepared the summaries for it. This particular trip was to Pickering Creek, and there was only one checklist, and that just shows sort of the central location. We walked along Teal Lane, or they now call it Peter Stifel Lane, and here are the species observed. And what I want to do is see if there's anybody has any trouble identifying these, or any trouble with confusions or whatever. Most of these were, this trip was designed to actually look at fairly common species. We had a little bit of a rain event in the first morning, so we waited under the, in the garage there but then it cleared out beautifully, and we were able to get 16 species, good looks at them. Some of them I think are pretty obvious. A lot of Canada geese were hanging around there. We have some black vultures flying overhead. Our first bald eagle of the course, blue jay winter, American crow, Carolina wren, mockingbirds. A couple of field sparrows were seen. That's the ping pong ball that we began to hear. Some juncos, white-throated sparrows, we'll see them again. Song sparrows, first look, not a good look at them. 3 towhees, which are declining. Redwings were starting to anchoree out in the marsh. 1 butterbutt and some northern cardinals. That's our 16. Any questions about any of those that would be an ID challenge for those? Now you're beginning to get to know the names as well as what the birds look like. And certainly the last couple of field trips that paid off in spades. We really did well.
Well, maybe just to ask, like the American crow and the graph on the red-winged blackbird.
Okay.
I know what a graph is.
Okay. Red-winged blackbird, crow.
Crow. Is there more than one crow that you?
Only one.
Just
One American.
Yes.
The other is the fish crow.
might be.
Right. Okay. The American crow goes caw caw.
I've had a tendency in the back to ignore past.
Okay. And at the time we did this trip, probably a fish crow would be very rare because it doesn't winter very well this far north. But as I say, if you see a crow and you want to know what it is, ask it if it's a fish crow. If it does, you know it's lying. Okay.
The Carolina wren, I get a little confused with.
Okay. Going down to Carolina wren on that list. There we go, and click on that. There's his. This is our largest wren in the east. It is generally male and female look alike. It is generally very tawny brown on the back, a little bit lighter on the belly. Bill is slightly curved, but that's true for many wrens. But the big field mark for this guy is the white line over the eye. So it's size, and it sings all year. The song varies. It has a number of different variations, but it's kind of a da-da-da-da-da-da-da rhythm, something like that, fairly loud. And of all the birds that sing in the wintertime, it's the one that you most likely hear. If you hear the bird doing tea kettle, and then you hear a buzz afterwards, it's a second wren, and that's the female answering back. I've got a picture of it, an interesting picture of it later on if we get to it. I'll show you.
And the other yesterday, I was looking at a mockingbird on the wire. That's some of it. How many different songs does a mockingbird have?
It has several score, but the record holder is the brown thrasher, which has over 1,000.
What?
and they're both mimics. And the thrasher doesn't sound quite as vociferous and as melodic as the brown thrasher. It repeats its phrases in twos. Dee dee, tweet it, and so on. And they're just starting to sing.
See, that's good to cabinet review because it doesn't choose.
Yeah, it does it in twos. The Mockingbird, 3 or more, usually in a series, and more melodic. And then the catbird basically sits and squeaks at you and doesn't repeat. But it is the other mimic that we have. Thrashers barely winter here, but we get a few. They don't sing until starting now. And they have a neat habit of starting to sing in the bushes and then move up a tree or a shrub or something toward the top, and they'll finish off at the top over about 10 minutes sometimes. I have one now in my yard singing. It's trying to set up territory. These birds are nowhere near the size of the thrasher, thrasher is very streaked underneath as well. These birds are much smaller. Okay, all right, good enough? Okay, we can go back up at the top if you can swing back. There you go.
Yeah, it's a little rumps thing I can
There
get.
you go, that's it. Okay, and we'll go back up one more to the lists. A and B. All right, and now we'll go to field trip number 2, my farm.
Yay.
You like that?
That was a great trip.
This was one to go after feeder birds, and the feeders weren't as productive as they have been in the past. There we go. This is the farm owned by Ann Haberton and John Shaw, and we had some lovely views in the morning. Again, the little marker that's on there just shows a central location for the farm. It's possible to go to the checklist and see the actual routes we walked. We had a snowstorm late in the morning. An estimated 2,400, probably an underestimate, of snow geese, and quite a few Canada geese also flying in from the fields. Turkey vultures, we had our first raptor really, other than bald eagle, and that was the sharp-shinned hawk. Sharp-shinned and hoopers are accipiters. These are the hawks that are kind of middle-sized, longish tail, and rounded wings.
May we look at them?
Yes, we can. Let's go ahead and look at the Sharpie. Okay. All right. That's the view. While you guys were in the granary, there was one sitting outside that I got a good look at here. And if we go to the pictures on the right side there, either one of the, okay, let's go down 1 or 2. Yeah, that'll do. This is an accipiter, spelled Accipiter, Accipiter. It's a kind of hawk, and these hawks are particularly fond of birds, and so they do try to surprise small songbirds as best they can. The Sharpie and the Cooper's hawk are the two that are the most common in this parts. There are others, but the Sharpie and the Cooper's hawk look a lot alike. The Sharpie is a bit smaller. It has a little bit shorter head protrusion, and but otherwise, on the whole, this is an adult. Otherwise, on the whole, the pattern is pretty much the same. The biggest difference, and you can't see it in this picture because the tail is fanned, but when the sharp-shinned hawk closes its tail, it's square on the end. When it's perched, you can see that, or sometimes when it's flying deliberately. When it's gliding like this, you can't see that. The Cooper's hawk, when the tail is closed, is rounded on the end. It has a bit more prominent white on that tip as well. It makes it easier to see. And that's the best field mark if you can see it. But all bets are off if the birds are soaring and have their tail spread. Accipiter hawks have a longish tail, somewhat narrow, longish tail, and wings that go out but are rounded, as opposed to a falcon where the wings go out and are pointed at the ends, like in the kestrel. The wing beats tend to be more rapid than in falcons. Even a little kestrel has powerful looking wing beats. They're pursuit birds. These birds, because of the long tail and the shorter wings, are real agile, and they can, when a songbird runs for cover in brush or in the woods, these birds can actually follow them that way. Falcons, the other class of raptors, no longer closely related apparently to the other hawks. And then the hawk that we saw yesterday was a buteo, and that's like the red-tailed hawk. Buteos have very broad wings and a shorter, broader tail, and they do a lot of soaring. Red-tailed hawk and red-shouldered hawk are the two most common. We didn't spend a lot of time on raptors because we never saw enough of them. So, I tried to tell you what they were like, but you couldn't compare them. That might change next time. We'll have to see. But we have to go to a hawk watch, and then we can really settle down on these guys. So again, most of these raptors ambush their prey by surprise. So that when we play that chickadee owl tape, for example, you wonder what the heck are the chickadees doing mobbing an owl? They're safe when they do that because the owl can't surprise them. So basically they're announcing, hey, there's a predator in here, be on the lookout to their species and other species as well. By mobbing it, they basically can show the predator's location. And maybe drive it away. Okay, so that was the sharp-shinned. As I said, the Cooper's looks the same. Let's go back up. See, okay, go back one more. There we go. Yeah, back, no, that's okay. I want to stay with Y Farm because we didn't get all the way through it. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so we had some eagles. We did have a red-shouldered hawk. Those of us who arrived earlier, slightly after we all got there, there was a red-shouldered hawk sitting right by the roadside, and we put the scope on it. It was not flying, but we could just see it and see its shape. And a little bit, it turned for us. We could see the robin red breast bands that it has. Very fine bands that make it look like a robin. It's a hawk and a lot bigger. We heard a horned lark, but we saw red-breasted nuthatches, Carolina wrens, a whole bunch of starlings, mockingbirds, a few bluebirds. Heard a robin. Had a hermit thrush there. House finches were hanging out around the house. Some juncos, some white-throated sparrows came to the feeder, and he had a bunch of brown-headed cowbirds perched around the barns because he has horses. They're feeding on the seeds from the stock. I only counted one grackle. There may have been more, and a bunch of cardinals. Any questions about any of those birds that were on that list that are identification problems for you? Once again, it's not just the bird itself, but the name. A lot of people who are new to birding, the names are bewildering, dealing with 600 and some in North America. So, we okay? All right, let's go to field trip number 3. Okay. Not a lot of birds on this. But I got you all up. This is the owling trip. We went around Tunis Mills and wound up ostensibly on the woods at Hope House, a very extensive wood lot there that Peter Stifel owns, and then came out and went across the street and found a real live screech owl. We actually had a total of 7 screech owls, one in the box, and then which I'll show you again later. And 6 others that answered the screech owl call in a couple of groups. But at least we heard them whinny and they came in. We just weren't able to get the spotlight on. We covered enough ground that we saw 2 pileated woodpeckers or heard them. And then a couple of other nocturnal birds that were just there as they began to move. We did hear one great horned owl was a long way away. That's the real deep hooting owl. Like that, as opposed to the 8-hooter, who cooks for you, who cooks for you all. Some of you have seen the ones in town. They cut down the sycamore trees where they used to nest over by the Historical Society. And it looks like, last I heard, they may be setting up shop over near the Arts Center. We'll see if that's the case. There's a couple of good old trees there. The question is there a hole for them? Okay. Any questions about those birds?
And then the sun came up, we started hearing Carolina wrens.
Right. You want any more about it?
No, I just said, I remember when the sun came up, you started to do that.
Started singing.
And I thought you were going to take us to picnic.
Yeah. Started singing.
You let us go home.
Yeah. We got wrens are no problem. Okay, let's go to the fourth trip. And that was down to Cambridge. Everybody, of course, likes Oakley Street, but we also went along the waterfront, along the Choptank River a little ways. And that was a nice introduction to our waterfowl. We learned the difference between dabbling ducks, which tip up and can't reach the bottom. If they can't reach the bottom, they don't feed there. And the diving ducks, which can go underwater for sometimes periods of time, a minute or more, coming up in different places. They both can feed on the same kinds of things. It's just the dabbling ducks can reach the vegetation and the diving ducks have to go down to it. But also diving ducks in some cases also feed on alternative things, including in some cases small fish and clams that are in the mud on the bottom. We had another snowfall of geese, but it was like an ice fall this time. They were out in the middle of the Choptank River, and there were 3,000 or 4,000 of them there. We were just, I don't think, did we see them go up? I don't think we did. I think they were just there. Occasionally that flock gets spooked by a passing eagle or something, and then it's just like flurries. A number of Canada geese. We saw our first widgeons, or ball pate, if you will. A lot of mallards up close and personal. You learn the difference between canvasbacks. We didn't have a, do we have a redhead there? No, we didn't have a redhead there, but we talked about the head shape of the canvasback and the white back. We saw only lesser scaup, did not see any greater scaup. Those are birds the hunters call blackheads. We saw bufflehead, one of our more common winter ducks here, and a raft of ruddy ducks off of the, a little bit downriver from Oakley Street. We had, thanks to some sharp eyes, we were able to pick out a horned grebe, which was probably as good a look as we had the rest of the course for that bird. There were some rock pigeons flying around. Those are just regular domestic pigeons. Good looks at the gulls as an introduction to them, ring-billed and herring gulls, and a couple of great blackbacks. We saw some cormorants flying by. We didn't really home in on them very much. There were vultures in the air, a number of bald eagles, and then inland there were red-bellied woodpeckers, downy woodpeckers calling, robins, white-throated sparrows, a lot of red wings there on the waterfront and a cardinal. Any questions about those, particularly the ducks? We okay with the names fitting to a pattern that you have? Yes.
Is a grebe, is that considered a duck or is that something different?
It is separate from, it's a waterfowl for sure, but it's not a duck. They have lobed feet instead of webbed feet, among other things, and they are not related. They're closer to loons, and they have other things that they can do. While they do dive, and that's usually how we see them, when they're threatened, they can often sink lower and lower in the water, so sometimes only their head is above.
It's a good choice.
The old name the gunners used to use for them were hell divers. We didn't get great, I was hoping for more. Grebes used to be pretty common here in the wintertime. And when I worked at Horn Point, I used to go out and have lunch on the lawns and watch a whole bunch of horned grebes as they slowly changed into breeding plumage. Really lovely. But they have not been very abundant. They've been on decline, unfortunately. Okay. Anybody need to see the horned grebes? Okay. All right. Okay, then we have our first big day, big long trip to Ocean City and Berlin, as the natives call it. And this was basically a trip to the coast, and I called it also waterfowl too, since we had a good introduction to them in Cambridge. And here was to try to see some coastal species, some of which now are showing up around here. We had a few snow geese, but our new goose there was the brant, and a flock of those at the inlet. Some Canada geese, tundra swan at the West Ocean City Pond. Another new dabbling duck for us, the gadwall with the black butt, the gray duck with the black butt, and the white wing patch, white speculum. More widgeons and mallards. An American black duck, which looks a lot like a female hen mallard, but is darker. Some northern pintails at the Ocean City Pond, a lone canvasback, lots of redheads at the Berlin Falls Park, as well as a large number of ringneck ducks. we had distant looks at greater scaup, which look different from lesser scaup. I've got some pictures later and we can talk about them more. But on the whole, lesser scaup has a little bit of a top knot and the greater scaup has a smooth head. There are some other differences, but those are the two that you really like to convince on. Ring-necked duck, lots of them at Berlin Falls Park. We had some long-tailed ducks, some folks picked them out. Used to be called old squaw. Lots of bufflehead, that's very common in the coastal bays. Some ruddies. A look at a pied-billed grebe, that's our second grebe, and rather different looking from a horned grebe, especially the bill being thicker and with a band on it, hence the name pied-billed. A waif, ruby-throated hummingbird that was being cared for at a local feeder. Some coots, little black small birds, a little bit smaller than chickens that swim like a chicken and have chalky white bills. They also have lobed legs. They are related to rails, not even related to grebes. Everybody's favorite, the American oyster catcher. Big red bill, beep, 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 beep. The only sanderlings we saw on the course, those are the white, very light colored sandpipers. In the wintertime, they're by far our whitest small sandpiper. In the summertime, they're also the common sandpiper that you see if you go to the beach, like on the coastal beaches. But they're still in fading adult plumage and they're brown. They don't get white until later in the fall. We saw one giggle gull, see more later, but one laughing gull. We had better looks because they were near the parking lot of ring-billed herring gull and great blackback gull, a few passing foresters' terns, which is the only turn around here in the wintertime. A number of red-throated loons, though they were pretty far off, but we did get to see them. They're the loon with the slightly upturned appearing bill, a little bit slimmer and snakier than the common loon, which has a much more robust bill and a thicker neck, all in winter plumage, which are gray and white. We had a gannet show offshore, and now they're in the bay. And there's a lot of gannets moving up the Chesapeake right now. Cormorants all over the inner harbor, great blue herons, and thanks to some of your persistence, the black-crowned night herons that we saw from the pond, even though they weren't at the roost, which is unfortunate, but at least we got to see. Other common birds like the woodpeckers, wrens, bluebirds, and so on, all the way down. Grackles, pretty much the same. So those were our coastal birds. Again, any trouble with identification that you'd like to home in on?
Can you show the black, what you were just talking about,
The heron?
heron?
Oh, black-crowned night heron?
Yeah.
Sure. It's up the list somewhere, a ways.
There it is.
There you go. Yeah, click on him. I believe both of the birds we saw were adults. There you go. Okay, and I know one of them was. They are kind of a light grayish white below and very dark on the back with a black cap. And it doesn't show well in that particular picture, but coming off the back of the neck are two white streamers that go down the back, kind of like threads. And those showing the breeding as adults. They are typically, when you see them, you don't see them with the neck extended. All herons fly with the neck retracted. Cranes fly with the neck out like this. All herons fly this way. Look at your next great blue, you believe it. But unlike the great blues and egrets, the necks are not well extended. They usually are hunched like this. But they can, if they're snaring a prey or stabbing at a fish or whatever, the neck is long and they can stretch it out. They breed in this region here, but they tend to be colonial. There are some breeding on Poplar Island, along with the other herons out there in that rookery. I don't know of any well-known black-crowned night heron rookery in this region, though, myself, but I do know they breed around here. There's the only other bird that looks like it, which we did not see, is the yellow-crowned night heron, and that has very distinct black patch through the eye and a white stripe above, so it has a striped head. And the young of both species are speckled. The bill is not as long as in a great blue heron, as fits the fact that it feeds on smaller fish and doesn't rely entirely on being speared. It also picks things up out of the undergrowth and mud. Need any more? that okay?
No, that's fine, I just
Okay.
refresh my memory.
Try to get your memory back, right, right. That's a great, the roost there had been really reliable. I had been there 2 weeks before, and there were about 10 or 15 birds in the roost, young and old. And then by the time we got there, and the top of the bird club later, it had gone down. So hopefully that roost is not being disturbed, although I saw some machinery in the field next door, and that might be. So it may be that they're getting flushed. They've hung around that pond for years, but the numbers in the roost have been extraordinary in the last 2 or 3 years. Okay, that was our coastal trip, and that was our biggest number of species on any trip to that date. Okay, that also ended that I flew off to the road to Morocco, and so when we came back, we went on the sixth field trip to Oxford Conservation Park for a look at those pesky sparrows. So let's have a look at that, Justin, and see what we got. Field trip number 6. That was actually not a bad day. We did all right with our target sparrows. We never saw some of the oddballs that I really was hoping would at least uncover a bit. Things like fox sparrow we missed, and maybe grasshopper sparrow. I'm still debating about that, but I certainly couldn't show it to you. And then several others. So we're going to have to do some pesky sparrows again. But a couple of you were able to catch out of the corner of your eye a Virginia rail. In one of the small ponds there. I did not see it, but your description was right on. So yeah, good find. We had some killdeer calling there. Ring-billed gulls, a lot of them were flying over, heading toward the center of their breeding range, which is the Great Lakes. Bald eagle sitting on a radio tower. A couple of looks at northern flicker, the big woodpecker with the big white rump. Fish crows were calling, Carolina chickadees and wrens. We go down a little ways and we get into the sparrows. There we go. The goldfinches. We had one chipping sparrow, which I saw, and I'm not sure I could show it to others. Maybe a couple of other people saw it. And I'm still wondering if it looked kind of flat-headed, if it wasn't a grasshopper sparrow, but it would have been really unusual if that was the case. I've got lots of chippies at my feeders now, so hopefully you'll have a chance to see them up close. We had lots of ping pong balls singing. Great field sparrow location. Also, for some of you, perhaps your first ever recognizable Savannah sparrow. Song sparrows, one swampy little fat dark sparrow, and the red-winged blackbirds were setting up territory and breeding. So we got into some pesky sparrows, and at least you got to see some of the more common ones and maybe a newbie or two against which you can compare others. Eastern sparrows aren't so bad. Get out west, you get botteries and cassins and stuff like that. Ooh, they're tough. They all are really little brown jobbies. Any questions on those?
Can you show us a picture of the Virginia rail?
Sure. All the way at the top. There we go. And I have been playing the tapes trying to coax them out of the blackwater. This rail is about this size, okay, and all rails are thin as a rail. They're laterally compressed. So if you saw it head on, it would look real skinny. That is supposedly an adaptation for moving into the marsh grasses, in and through the marsh grasses. It has a kitty, 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 kitty call, and then during breeding season, you hear like that. And often, especially if they're getting close to being on territory, they will, if you play a tape, I've had them walk over the tops of my shoes. Otherwise, rails are really hard to see because they're very secretive and they don't like to be shown. Best time to see them is at low tide when the mud flats are exposed, and sometimes they'll walk out and pick up things like that. Hopefully we'll see some at Bombay Hook. The larger relative of them, which is a little bit taller and bulkier, is the clapper rail. That's on the coast, that like salt marshes. And then its counterpart in freshwater is the king rail, which does seem to breed in the blackwater area, but it prefers breeding-wise freshwater. And then Virginia is kind of all over the place. And I've had them at Pickering Creek, we've had them at Oxford Conservation Park. Whether they ever set up shop there, I don't know. There's enough people walking dogs around, should feel comfortable there. But if it's a small looking rail with the longish bill, it's a Virginia. Okay, others? All right. And let's go to, we did the fields and hedgerows for our 7th trip up in northern Talbot County. And our quest was for horned larks and then hopefully some other hangers-on that are often found in the open fields in the wintertime, birds that breed on the tundra. They did not materialize mostly anywhere this winter. Possibly the pipits were the exception, but I've only heard of one pipit being seen, and that was by the kids on the birdathon. We did stop at a small reclamation pond where we had a bunch of green-winged teal and had decent scope looks at those teal. They're a very small duck, very buzzy flight, size of a ruddy duck, basically, with a brown head and a slash of green through the eye. That's the drake. And when they fly with other ducks, you can see they look like half the size. They're also very skittish, so that it's hard to surprise them. Had a killdeer calling. We saw our first yellow legs, a shorebird that stands tall. All of these birds were up to their skivvies in the water, so you couldn't see the bright yellow legs that they have. We saw them later on. And they have the call that goes clear, 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 usually in threes. Clear, clear, clear. Osprey had returned by then. We had a couple of red tails and then woodpeckers. And then if we go down a ways, we did see horned larks. I was really pleased that we were able to find them without having to go all the way up to Caroline County for them. A nice little cluster of horned larks there on Colby Road. And we had real good looks at them. Some of them came up very close. We even heard them calling and singing. That's a wonderful field bird to have around, and they do breed here. Kinglets, starlings, and a pine warbler. Yes. Heard the pine warbler singing and had a good look at it. I was just trying to play the call, and next thing I knew it was showing up for us. Pretty cool. Yeah, and I learned something about that because pine warblers are neck breakers. They get up in those loblolly pines and sing, and they drive you nuts. There's a phenomenon birders have called warbler neck, and we'll have that in the spring. Any questions about any of those birds? The horned lark should be pretty obvious to everybody now.
Could we see it anyway?
Yeah, you want to see them anyway? Okay, let's do horned lark.
Top.
Yeah, right top. There you go. There you go. And there the horns are up. But we saw them too. They're yellowish, sometimes brighter than that one. But they're yellowish on the face with that black mask and the V. I don't know what it is about field birds, but meadowlarks have that V. Dick Sissels have it. A whole bunch of birds that like the open country seem to have that V. Flickers do too, although that's less of an open country bird. But at any rate, they have that particular bit. The horns, if you can see them, are obvious if they're up. Females are generally duller overall. The bird, when it flushes in front of your car as you drive by, you will see a black tail and maybe a little bit of white on the outside edges. The black tail actually is more prominent than the white. And they'll flush, and usually, unlike, say, a savanna sparrow, which will come down again ahead of you, they'll flush out into the fields and stay there. Very high tinkling kind of sound. It's a really, really pretty time that farmers are working up their fields, the horned larks are singing. So,
Are the horns actually feathers?
they are feathers. They're actually modified feathers, probably from the old crest. A lot of larks in Europe have crests, so it's probably some modification. Okay, so that was our quest for some field birds on working lands, actually agricultural lands. Then we had our big day at Blackwater, and despite the rain, that was our record number of total species. We had 59.
Wow.
Wow, yeah. And it was just a potpourri. It was hard to quest after anything because I really wasn't sure what was going to still be behind. But the shovelers were there. Probably the best bird of that series was the blue-winged teal, which we all had a great look at. An uncommon teal, a little bit bigger than the green-wing with that crescent moon on the face and those bright blue four-wing patches when they fly. We had mallards. We had a couple of lingering pintail. There's even a canvasback. Before we left in Cambridge, we went to the waterfront there and had probably our best looks at surf scoters up fairly close. Skunkheads, killdeer. We had, hard for me to point it out to you and then describe it to you, but we had a Wilson snipe that flushed, zigzagged out across one of the wetlands, and then sat down, and several of you sharp-eyed folks were able to keep looking for it, and we were able to find it again and see it in the scope, but very much blended against the background. One of the things about snipe is they have that real long bill, chunky shorebird, kind of short legs, real long bill, and on the back, when they turn their back to you, they have these white stripes down the back that hunters call snipe stripes. So we kind of went on a sniper. We had both yellow legs, greater and lesser, the usual gulls. Again, it was such a potpourri. We saw a northern carrier, used to be called marsh hawk, and a couple of you identified it for me. I don't think I saw it, but I know you all did. You mentioned the white rump. This is a bird that has somewhat of a dihedral flight over the marsh, usually low unless it's migrating. And usually you can get a look on the rump, and it has a bright white patch right above the tail, base of the tail. And all sexes and all plumages have that. Let's see, we had the usual woodpeckers, flickers, and we were able to stop those of us who were still there and saw the kestrel along the roadside there. We saw another one later on our last trip. We had ruby crown. Oh, we went to a place that I'd never been before, that park that is right there at Egypt Road Park. Great place. I definitely would recommend it, stopping there anytime anybody goes down Egypt Road. Really, really pretty, unless it's overpopulated with people or something. Nice habitat, great looks at pine warblers there. We had a hermit thrush come in. We had, let's see, song sparrows. Oh, and our other good bird, eastern meadowlark, right? Beautiful looks at meadowlarks, a cluster of them, but 3 or 4 of them sitting nicely up on the wire. We were able to see all the field marks and see the white tail when they flew, the white outer tail feathers, and a bird that speaks pine, unfortunately. And we had some more pine warblers. Anything you want to see or anything that you needed to help out with identification?
I'd like to see the golden eagle.
You want to see the golden eagle? That's right. I forgot all about it. I forgot all about that. Yeah, on the road down, we saw it, but you'd have to believe me, wouldn't you? Okay, golden eagle. There it is. It's not terribly related to the bald eagle. The harrier's in between. This is not what we saw exactly. I'm trying to see if I can find an adult in the air. That's a fairly young one. Yeah. Keep going. Let's see if this is close. Of course, we saw it in the air way up. It was way above the vultures, and it was soaring. The thing that attracted my attention to it at first was it had the wings in a slight but not big dihedral. I always look at Peg. But it was a slight dihedral, which bald eagles are always straight up. So when I saw that, I thought, that's interesting. The other thing that I could see before it really got way up was that at the base of the tail, you can see it here, it's white. Vultures never. So those two things. Otherwise, the bird was all dark. You couldn't see the golden head or the nape or any of those other marks, but you could see that white at the base of the tail. The juveniles are kind of like black vultures, and they have white at the base of the wingtips, but they're also have a lot of other white. In general, however, the bird you're most likely to confuse it with is a bald eagle. This is, of course, a much rarer bird. It would be the bald eagle, wings out straight, of course, the white head and tail, no problem. The juvenile bald eagle, however, is mottled below. I always say radial, whereas the golden eagle is always solid. solid ground. It's a red letter day if you can see it, but if you can catch it in the air and see it fly and catch that dihedral, that also is a good problem. We get a couple every year. There's been one at Pickering Creek, although not lately. Camille had it at Pickering Creek, that's right. And yes, and you're the last one to see it, Camille. But this one, I have no question that that's what that bird was at all. And for some of you, you say, well, that's a lifer. Well, it may not have been a lifer look, but it's certainly justifiable as such. And they're all migrating away. They like to breed in mountainous, rocky areas. Out west, they're much more common. But down here, they do come down to Blackwater and elsewhere. There's usually 2 or 3 at Blackwater, and there's a guy from Pennsylvania who kind of counts and monitors them, or at least he used to. So they have a better idea of the numbers that we're getting. Okay, that's the golden eagle, and very fortunate look. So actually, that trip had some really neat birds. Great looks at fine warblers, a new habitat. The eagle, fantastic. The meadowlark. What more do you have? The snipe. What more do you want? All right. 59 species too. That's a good trip for even the taller bird club.
In the rain.
Yeah, in the rain. That was not the best weather. We could have done better, I think. Okay, the last one we just finished is down to Trap, looking at the old mill sites and a couple of stream crossings on the back roads there. Soon to be impacted, I'm afraid, by the Trap East development, but we can hope. We heard down there a wood duck flying away. I've heard a couple of them. The female screams. The male doesn't say anything. This time of year, they're in pairs, almost certainly. And so when you hear the female, there's almost certainly a male along with it somewhere. Of course, it's a gaudy duck. If you really want to see wood duck, go to Pickering because they have a wonderful wood duck nest box program here. And the odds are very good that you'll see those colorful drakes in some of the ponds. Let's see what else we had down there. These were mainly common birds. Good looks at pileated woodpecker, 2 spots. Good looks at flickers, and 2, not 1, but 2 kestrels. I had one today, by the way. I was coming back from Denton. So they're lining up on the telephone wires now. So birds you see on the wire may not be mourning doves, it might actually be kestrels. That's a little falcon that pumps its tail when it's nervous or when it lands, like a phoebe. We had golden crown. We had both kinglets, golden crown and ruby crown. When you see a small bird in the wintertime really flustering around in the bushes, flipping its wings, acting real nervous, it's undoubtedly a kinglet, and then you just have to look at the head to see which one. Ruby crown has an eye ring, golden crown has eye lines. And that's all you need to know. Golden crown is actually slightly smaller. It's related to a British bird called the firecrest, which is Europe's smallest bird. They don't have hummingbirds over there. We also did see, I saw it, I don't know whether anybody else got on it or not, but it was there for the picking for just a few seconds. There was a blue-gray gnatcatcher at the last crossing. I'm sorry, at the Wrights Mill crossing. But it didn't hold, and it was in a hurry somewhere, and I don't hear it, so I couldn't really point it out to you, but it was there. And I'd seen it scouting the day before at a different location. Okay, the rest were pretty obvious, I think.
Can we look at the gnatcatcher?
You want to look at the gnatcatcher? Sure. And if you get out now in the next few days, next couple of weeks, it's right between, yeah, there you go. It's distantly related, not real closely related, but behaves like a kinglet. And there she is, or he is, that's a he. This is a small sprite of a bird, about kinglet size, a little bit bigger because it has a longer tail. The tail, it always flashes sideways. Instead of pumping up and down, it'll flash sideways or in a loop like this, and it's always doing it. It has a very high fussing note that sounds like it's hissing through its teeth, and I have trouble hearing it unless it's sitting on my shoulder. The male has that lovely black eyebrow and breeding plumage and is even gaudier looking. It's a prettier blue than that. But the eye ring, the dark tail with can see the white tail borders and the constant flipping of the tail. It's a very nervous bird, but unlike the kinglets, it doesn't flip its wings as much. It's more of the rear end goes along. It does breed here, tiny little nest. Past years, we've seen it on our trip down to Kokomo. Maybe we'll find another one. But they'll be moving through now, and because the leaves aren't out very much, a good chance of seeing it. How'd you do yesterday at Pickering? Or was it this
Today.
morning?
Today.
Yeah, any
We
luck?
didn't see, yeah, lots of things, we didn't see that.
You did not? Okay.
We
Yellow
don't
throat?
get the list.
Yeah, did you get a yellow throat?
I don't think so, I
Okay,
left,
what'd you do? What'd you do?
when they
What'd
went to the water.
Oh, okay. Because those are all new right now.
Lots of flickers,
Great.
just flying
Fantastic.
around.
So stuff's on the move, and we've got some nice weather coming up, a warm front by the weekend. I predict that I'm going to to Atkins Arboretum doing a trip on Sunday. It could be really nice.
So don't you say with the gnatcatcher that it sort of resembles the coloring of a montreux bird?
Yeah, a lot of people say it reminds them of a miniature mockingbird. If you really look at a mockingbird, it doesn't look anything like it, but it reminds them of the
Because that
overall.
tail there.
It doesn't have the white flashes in the wing. But the main thing is it becomes your third nervous bird, but the kinglets are clearing out, and so eventually it'll be the nervous bird of the bush.
Is there a possibility we could hear a sound?
Let me see it. I don't know whether I can get sounds on this or not.
It says audio there.
Is there audio down there? Good.
Bottom left.
Yeah, because this is a link. Yeah, let's do listening.
There.
Good, yeah. It's not the same sounds that we get with the Cornell, but it's close.
Was I have to reset the screen share.
Okay.
1 second.
Hope you can hear it.
We'll turn it up.
Yeah. See if it works. That's what this is all about. This is a very unscripted class, so. That's about it. Yeah, barely hear it. That's the fussy part. There's a cardinal singing in the background. Like that. Yeah, it is. When I can hear it, I can hear it easily. Pick out it. I just can't, it doesn't carry on.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, Justin. Appreciate it. Okay, well that, again, any questions? That's
Can
what we
see
did.
the nuthatch?
Nuthatch.
Yeah.
Which one?
Okay, which one?
Well, you get a red, let's do the red breast.
Red-breasted, okay. Enjoy it while you can.
We had so many of them.
Yeah, the
Yes.
feeders, yeah.
This is an eruptive species from the northern coniferous forest. It's started showing up around here, I think, in September, and has been here all winter. I've had up to 2 pair at my feeders. I think I have a pair now, having gone away. A couple of them came back. We saw numbers of them in various places. As in true nuthatch fashion, as one of those corner pictures shows, it goes down. It can go down the tree head first, and it does not use its tail as a prop. Okay, unlike woodpeckers. And I think I've told you more than once, but I have this brown creeper coming to my feeder and is feeding on the ground and is still propping its tail, like it's going to fall off. But anyway, these guys don't. They're lovely little things, a little bit smaller than the white-breasted. The white-breasted would have an all-white face and no red underneath. It does have a little bit of rusty on the vent, but not as red overall as this, and a little bit higher pitched kind of call, but you're more likely to see it than hear it. But enjoy it while you can. I'm predicting that next year there'll be 0. But it looks like it's the pattern now, maybe every other year. We might get a couple next year, but the following year might be an outburst again. There are a number of eruptive species like that. That sometimes they're winter finches, purple finches erupted. We had a few this winter. Some winters you have an awful lot. They're basically relates to the failure of the cone crops up north and the spruce budworms and the insects that feed on those, and the birds capitalize on that. So when that falls through, they come further south. So that's what's happening with this bird here. It's a they're remarkably tame because they breed in areas where there aren't a lot of people. And I have colleagues who have been patient enough to get them to feed out of the hand. But they come, when I go out with my peanut butter and suet, and the log is empty, they're very angry. I mean, they'll sit there and I can get within a couple of inches. Neat little bird. Okay. All right, anything else?
So you say the white-breasted and the brown-headed will still be around?
Yes, white-breasted is a resident here, and we're at the northern end of the range of brown-headed, and yes, they do breed here. We don't get them in Pickering. There is a colony of them up at the Horsehead, Chesapeake Bay Environmental Center. They're fairly common in the Blackwater area, and Cape Henlopen has some. But that's about as far north as they get. It's a more southern species. And they're the squeaky toy. Okay. Sound like a rubber ducky. Okay, and I guess they segregate also in a sense, white-breasted versus brown-headed. White-breasted tends to stay on the bole of the tree, go up and down the trunk or the larger limbs, whereas the brown-headed will go out on the ends of the limbs and feed on the pine cones. Pick out stuff out of there. So in a sense, they segregate their feeding areas. And the red-breasted is kind of the same way. Okay. All right. Well, that will end the internet as far as I'm concerned. So we'll now go back to the PowerPoint. And I'm going to try to challenge you and trick you and otherwise, but at the same time, give you some confidence. So let's see how this goes. I have some notes here. I'll talk about prairie potholes if time allows. Half hour, I think we might be able to get away with it. All right, so we'll let that go. There's a splash screen coming up. Now I can click it right. Yeah, so, there we go. So you've seen that before. And we'll just go on. What is it? Yeah, Eastern screech owl, and that's the one that was so photogenic for us at the end of the owling trip. And as far as I know, I don't know whether it has eggs there or not. I have to check. This is a picture, it's not mine. Most of these pictures are ones that I've taken over the years. They're not like I took them all in this course. By any means, I was too busy yakking. But a few. But anyway, this is from Ann Haberton up at Wyatt Farm. That lovely morning. And that's the picture she got of the gibbous moon with those birds there, which are Canada geese, not Canadian. Okay. And we had some other things as well. What do you think that bird is? We didn't see that. This was a picture I took at the Oxford Conservation Park.
Different white on
Yeah.
face.
Yeah, yeah. It's a Canada goose.
Is it?
It's a Canada goose. They come in various aberrancies, and you think that one's bad. This is the one I got at Bombay Hook. As far as I know, it's associating with that bird there, the true Canada goose, but it's basically this kind of plumage where you get a lot of light in it, but not totally albino. That's usually called leucistic, Leucistic, leucistic. I sometimes call them piebald, or painted, like a painted horse. But as far as I can tell, posture-wise and everything else, it's Canada geese. They do occasionally hybridize with snow geese and others, but they take on the snow geese body shape. They're more dumpy and not as large. But you get all kinds of varieties. This could also be a barnyard escape and be a who knows what. But most likely it is a leucistic Canada. That one's not a Canada, though. What was that?
Almost looks like a pigeon.
It's a little smaller than a Canada goose, size-wise. That's a brand, right? Okay. This one's on grass. We saw them in the water. It has that little neck piece, and generally kind of a dark bird on the back and light below. It does not have the chin stripe of a Canada goose. That neck piece sort of replaces it. Tend to be in flocks in the wintertime. Used to be fairly common in the Chesapeake Bay, too. They basically left this area now. That's the brant. Okay. A coastal bird right now.
Where did they go?
They go north and up into the Baffin Island, breeding up in the tundra area like that.
But you said you didn't think they would be here, where would they go then?
Oh, they basically, the population, if it either went extinct here and they're just on the coast now in the wintertime, they used to hunt them here.
Right.
So they just, for whatever reason, there's not forage enough for them here or whatever those reasons are. And so the population is either shifted to the coast or this population's gone and the one on the coast is left. Sometimes there are huge flocks of them over there, 50, 60, 80 birds. This year, we were fortunate to find the flock that we did. I didn't see that many. Again, they may be wintering further north due to global warming. There's not as much ice and snow cover up north, and so the birds are able to forage more. All our geese were late getting here, possibly for the same reason, and it may be why we don't have many scoters this year. Some of those ducks stayed up in Long Island Sound. How many species are here in this picture? This is another one, Anne's.
Well, the snow geese and a blueface. And a blueface.
Yes, you got it. That's a blue
That
goose.
must have been from Shaw, too.
Yeah, and that's from Y Farm. That's Ann's picture. This is mine from a flock of snows that covered acre after acre after acre over in coastal Delaware. And there's a blue goose on the ground with some snows in the background. I was looking for a pink footed goose, but I dipped on it. Although the birds have been seen. That one bird in 50,000 snow geese doesn't compute. Oh, let me go back to that again. One of the other marks of snow geese in particular, and you can see it on this blue, is the gate mark where the jaws meet, the upper and lower mandible. There's a black area here. And that is characteristic of the blue snow, the blue and snow. Both of them have it. Ross's goose, which is like a miniature snow goose and everything, but it doesn't have the gate mark. It has a wartier bill and no mark in it. So that it's less common. Birders eventually try to add it to their life list. It's less common. Usually there are a few. It's more common on the Pacific, but it lacks the gate mark, and that's one of the marks you'd want the field marks you'd want to identify with. Okay. That's what? That's our kestrel. Right. This is the one we saw, and it's a little fuzzy, the picture, but the one that we had yesterday was the day before. When did we do that? Yeah, day before. On Tuesday. That was more like this. The one we had down at Blackwater was real bright on the back, and it probably was a male. Female falcons tend to be a little bit bigger, and this one has some barring on the back, so it may be a female. It could be an immature changing, but it's got enough color. I think it's an adult. Beautiful little falcon, 2 eye marks. Yeah, I got that. Gosh, that photo is probably several years old. I probably got it, maybe even the first atlas somewhere, second atlas. This is premonition for those just getting home.
Circle around.
I took this picture down at Taylor's Island in one of the old churches down there. It was sitting right on the cross. I just had it.
Oh, my goodness.
You of course know the turkey vulture has its call is hurry up and die, hurry up and die. And there's the black vulture. For comparison, it's a more compact, dumpy bird. These, of course, it'd be hard for me to get pictures of through the scope in the air, but it's a dumpier bird, has more bare legs and are quite white. All the vultures defecate down their legs. That's believed to be a way of, if you will, sanitizing them from some of the carrion they're walking around on. But in the turkey vultures, the legs tend to be light, red or dark. And in black vulture, they have a longer leg and a little bit shorter feathering at the top, so that when the birds are perched, you often can see that big white leg hanging out below.
That was an interesting fact.
Right. And the head pattern is different, and they're not that closely related, it turns out, even though they have somewhat similar habits. That is a killdeer, and it's a plover. And if you have killdeer around your place, luckily nesting in your drive or on your lawn or whatever, watch their plover behavior. If they're feeding, not when they're doing other things. If they're feeding, it's walk and stop, walk and stop, walk and stop. Whereas most other shorebirds, non-plover shorebirds, walk and pick and pick and pick and pick as they go. When I took this picture some time ago, I thought, wow, this is going to be a teachable moment. I've got two species there. But when I looked at the picture, I realized I had only one. But this shows you some of the challenges of trying to identify birds. What are
Greater
they?
yellow.
Yes, they're greater yellowlegs. I wonder how they got that name. But the field mark of a greater yellowlegs is the longer bill than the lesser with a slight upturn. And that's fine on the left, but it's not fine on the right. The bill is still pretty long. A lesser yellowlegs bill would be about 2/3 that length. So more like a sticker. And the bird would look a little bit smaller if they were standing next to each other. But the bird on the left, on the right, is actually closer, and it still doesn't look that small. So these are two greater yellowlegs. They were associating together, and then they actually took off and started to call. No problem with it. But the classic one is the one on the left. Plumage-wise, they're speckled on the back. There are probably some differences in feathering that a shorebird expert would know. The main thing is identify it as yellowlegs first and try to see if you can tease out the species from there. In the fall, it's even harder when there are a lot of juveniles around who haven't read the textbook yet. But in the spring, usually your birds are going to be more like the typical one on the left.
What's the greater calls how many times?
Pardon?
The greater call how many times?
3 times. Greater is clear, clear, clear. And the lesser typically is clear. Not as loud. Not as loud. When I take the gang to Bombay Brook, we'll probably hear them both. I know nobody likes seagulls, it seems to me. Nobody seems to like gulls. I don't know why it is. They're big and they're easy to see and they're close and everything else, and yet they're not popular birds. But nonetheless, might as well get comfortable with them as best we can. These are adults. Probably this one is late spring, not quite full of breeding plumage. But this is which one? This is the ring-billed gull. It has a slightly more rounded head. It has the ring on the bill, black near the tip, but not at the tip. And it has greenish yellow legs. The back of a gull is called the mantle. That's the gray area there. When they fly, they have white spots at the ends of the wings, black tips. Okay. Comparison.
Hearing.
That's the herring gull. Right. Okay. Same kind of mantle. All right. But the bill is more robust. It's bigger. As I say, sometimes when you see them in the air, if you can see the bill, it's probably a herring gull. The ring-billed gull bill is a little more subtly smaller and thinner. In the adults, the leg color is a big help because the herring gull is pink-legged. But young birds are all pink-legged, so that all bets are off if the birds are immature. All right. We have the world's largest gull here, too. That's your great black-backed gull, and it is very dark gray or black on the back. That's a huge bird, larger than a herring gull with a considerably larger, robust bill. Again, when it flies, you'll see the black back, but the black tips on the wings with the white feathers as well. It is pink-legged. But as an adult, you wouldn't have any trouble identifying it all. All right, how about this one? Still a gull.
Laughing.
Yes, it's a giggle gull. All right, black bill. It's the winter plumage, so you can just see the smudge of what will become that. Right? And those are the ones you're going to start seeing now. They're flying over. There was a flock on Tuesday morning that went over my place before I headed down to Cambridge. Laughing, yelling, screaming, and carrying on, and that's going to get more and more common as the birds move through here. They breed in this region. They're really rich up in New Jersey, coastal barrier islands there. The dark bill and dark legs are important. The mantle is a darker gray, but not black. Darker gray relative to herring gulls and somewhat more uniform overall. Okay.
Pintail.
Sure?
Yeah.
Yes. That's the northern pintail, all right. That's how you see a lot of them. It's a dabbling duck. And of course, there's the greyhound. The greyhound of the duck world, pintail, streamlined at both ends, very handsome drake. But again, often feeding the way you see it there as a dabbler duck is supposed to. This is another dabbling duck, kind of a very close and personal view. Looks fat because it's standing on an ice cake at Oakley Street, not this year.
That's a widget?
That's a widgeon. That's a bald pate American widgeon with the bald, not bald, but feathered white spot on the head and the green slash back from the eyes.
I always
And you can, go ahead.
tails, because you couldn't see the tails, you know how they're tails.
Yes, yeah, you couldn't see the tail. You can see the white patch in the wing.
Yeah.
They have a big white, they have a green speculum with white in the front, like a blue-winged teal has blue. He looks cold. How about that?
Pretty sharp, yeah.
What is it?
Scout?
No, it's shovel.
It's a shoveler. Yes, it's a shoveler. Look at that bill. I actually took this picture in Texas.
It's a very strange.
You can't, yeah, it's a funny angle doing funny things. When you see shovelers in the water, especially when they're dabbling, you see those great big orange legs that they have. Huge feet, which they use to stir up the mud as well as paddle with. It has that chestnut band across the breast from one side to the other. And of course, the bill, when the bird flies, the bill
Are
really
those your
shows.
photos?
Pardon?
Are those your photos, the last two?
Yes, yeah. Most of these are mine. I'll try to give credit when I see some others. I said I took that in Texas at a wildlife refuge. All right, here's a challenge. What's that? Good. Gosh, you guys, you've learned something here. You've learned something here. This is fabulous. Okay, it's a canvas back. You can't see all of the nice marks on it, but you can see that sloping forehead a little bit, right? And you can see the bright white back while he's preening away.
Oh, now I see the eye.
Yeah, you can see the eye. There's I think it's the same bird. I think I took this at Oakley Street. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And notice the feet are dark, unlike that shoveler with those bright orange feet. But there you can see the Roman nose very well. And I believe it's the same bird. I'm not totally sure. I think so. They were both taken at Oakley Street, and the water looks about the same. Not to confuse it with this one. This is the redhead, right? Right. Not so bright on the back, not this big white bit. Head shape is very different, especially in the front. If you can get close enough or get a good look at it, of course, the bill itself with the black mark and ring on the neck as well. Female has the same kind of bill. She has kind of a scaup look with the whitish face, but it's not as bright white around the base of the bill as in the scaup. But could be confused. I usually identify her by the company she keeps, or if I can, by the bill. Okay, that one.
He said skull. Skull.
It's a scaup. Which one?
Greater or lesser?
Yeah. Sometimes that's all you can do. It's the lesser. It does have a hint of a top knot. Okay. Also, in a greater, the head is a greenish color in most lights. That's not the most reliable field mark, but it works sometime. But it does have enough of a hint, and if you get a hint of it, it's probably a lesser. We did see some graders at distance. I don't have a picture of one here, so we can move on. But the grader sides by the waterline, they tend to be whiter, at least the birds that I've seen. But don't confuse it with this bird.
No, coot. No.
Nope,
What?
we saw it.
So the other guy?
Nope. Saw a bunch of them at Blackwater, saw a bunch of them at the Berlin Falls. Head shape is obviously very different. The other field mark that's really important is that crescent of white that comes up from the water line, that little triangle. And the drake, you can see that at a very long distance. Ringneck duck. Ringneck duck. Okay? Sometimes found, less likely to be found with scaup because the ringneck duck really likes fresh water and the scaup are more brackish and salt. But beginners sometimes confuse them, but there really are, the difference in the head shape is quite obvious with that big top knot and that white line coming up from the water. I've almost never seen single females anywhere. I've almost always seen them with their drakes, so you can usually tell them apart. It's one of our earliest ducks to come back in the spring if we have ice in our freshwater ponds. Okay, yes. Surf scoter, it's the skunk head. This one I did get at Ocean City Inlet some time ago. We saw these birds off Cambridge on our last field trip, not too far from shore. Really gaudy thing. When you get a good look at the bill, it's not just the skunk head, but the whole 9 yards is pretty interesting. See how far back in the body the feet are? Okay, this is a real diving duck, and it uses its feet to propel it underwater. Okay, likes to eat clams.
So the diving ducks are the ones that have to.
They're the ones that have to run across the water. That's right. They can't just slam and take off. Know him? Hooded merganser. And look at the bill. See how different it is from the normal duck bill. They almost have teeth. They have very strong serrations along that very narrow, non-duck-like bill for capturing fish. This is the smallest merganser in our area, and that's a nice male displaying. Beginners occasionally confuse it with this duck. Bufflehead, right? Look at the difference in the bills. Okay, the crest is also different. There's no black line on the back of the Drake bufflehead's head. The colors that you see there are iridescent and often don't show.
But you look for that little black.
Look for that black ring, and it's really fan shaped. It changes the whole shape of the head. But if you really have a doubt, check the bill out, because that's pretty easy to see if you get that good a look. Bufflehead, very common in our brackish waters. When the merganser is not displaying, the crest is somewhat deflated and a little bit harder to make out, although the coloring is still really pretty. And that's one of our more gorgeous birds. And there's the female bufflehead, so you can see kind of the subtle differences there. But again, the bill is a big dead giveaway. On the whole, hoodies like small freshwater ponds. We saw quite a few of them at Berlin Falls. There were 20 to 30 of them at Pickering Creek through late winter, early spring. Okay, we saw this bird in flight sitting on our bluebird house.
For a minute.
Right. No, not a rat. I mean,
Yeah, Bill's wrong. Yeah.
Shoot, a swallow.
Yes, it's the tree swallow. These are the ones that occupy bluebird houses, so I took that picture deliberately. And that's a nice male. Female is a little bit duller in color, not quite as iridescent. And around Pickering Creek or Atkins or wherever, you'll see a few of them will occupy and take over bluebird houses. And they're desirable. You know, it's a myth that bluebirds eat mosquitoes. Okay? Unfortunately, they eat dragonflies that eat mosquitoes. Yes.
Bluebirds eat.
That's purple martins. Purple martins. Everybody says, I want purple martins around. They'll eat mosquitoes.
Oh, so purple martins eat dragonflies that eat.
Not the bluebirds, you maligned the bluebirds.
Yes, for a minute there, we were gonna go out.
Did I say bluebirds?
Yes.
I meant purple martins. My fault.
Well, when.
There's a bluebird today. You saw that picture. This is John Shaw's picture. We didn't see that many. But he had up to 40 of them.
That's a nice bar, that's a bluebird.
I looked at the prices of mealworms, and you gotta love bluebirds. Bluebird is a thrush, and all thrushes are spotted at some time in their life, including young robins, I'm sure you're used to. This bird has spots on the breast. Any idea?
Who is it?
Thrush. So what thrush?
It is a thrush.
Oh,
What?
This picture was taken in winter.
Oh.
What's our winter thrush?
winter thrush.
Our winter thrush has an eye ring, raises its tail and lowers it slowly, raises its tail, lowers it slowly. Is browner, tawnier on the tail.
Is it a hermit?
Hermit thrush.
Oh, right.
We did spook a few up
That's the
to
only
get
word I
them to
can.
come in. It's the only thrush in here in the wintertime, okay? Wood thrush has spots on the breast too, but they're big and round and much bolder overall. There are some other thrushes that resemble this one, but in the wintertime, you can be pretty sure it's a hermit thrush. And if it comes into you, it'll go purr, 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 like that, sit and do the tail thing. And occasionally, if it's really nervous, flip its wings up the finger. Red-headed woodpecker, right?
No, belly.
You got it. Red-bellied woodpecker. Can't quite see the belly on there. He's at my feet or in the backyard. Okay, tell me what this is first.
Is it a downy?
That's a downy woodpecker, okay. How do you know it's not a hairy woodpecker? There are two field marks. Go ahead.
The beak for one.
Beak is one, right? A little bark sticker, as Peterson used to call it. One other thing,
Something about the red.
Smaller?
The dots on.
the tail.
The tail.
The black spots on the tail. That's a female, by the way, because the male has a red top knot. The hairy, some downies are missing the spots, but hairies never have them. And usually the tail is bigger and wider and whiter overall. But the bill on a hairy is typically quite more robust. This is a small, tiny one. I have had birds intermediate, but I don't know whether they're hybrids or whether that's just the way they are.
Where's
but,
the red on its head?
The red on the head, that's a female, so there's no red. Okay? Yes, up the titmouse. Peter. Right? Easy to overlook because you hear it all the time. And that's what kind? Carolina. This particular picture I like because it shows how sharply the bib is demarcated from the breast. In a black-capped chickadee, if you ever go out in Western Maryland or elsewhere, that's much more rugged, ragged.
Is that from your house?
That's our feed.
So I love the seeds.
Yeah, that's a mixture. And they say don't buy cheap seed, nothing eats millet. Phooey. They love it. I had about 30 goldfinches on the ground eating millet this morning. So, and they were leaving the thistle seed alone. There's your red-breasted, right? Okay. Move on here so we get through. Not my picture. I could never get that in the scope. Okay. Which one? That's the ruby crown. Eye ring, and you can see barely the crown part there. A bird in the bushes, flitting away as a kinglet, one or the other, and here's his counterpart, equally nervous. And that's the golden crown with the white and black eye stuff, no eye ring.
So the ruby crown can really flash that whole red, disappointed.
I saw one, I guess it was scouting the day before, on Monday when I was scouting this. Man, it had it up like this. It was just incredible. Yeah. Once in a while, and this time of year, because they're starting to get interested in territoriality, you may see that. It's quite a flash. There's the gnatcatcher again. Well, we don't have to belabor that. How about that bird? One of my early pictures and not with the scope. No, I'll tell you, it's about that big.
Oh,
Really?
is that your creeper?
Nope. This picture is about 15 years old. Nope. And it's hard because you can't get the scale. It's in a nail can. Small nail can, not that big.
And
it's
it's an
made its
adult?
nest there. It's a Carolina red.
Wow.
And she has 4 nice little babies in that nail can.
I know. It's like, get out of my.
Doesn't seem like, I'll tell you, I got that close to her just with a regular camera. Something else.
That's.
A pesky sparrow.
Chipping sparrow? The
Nope.
rufous?
Start with the breast. Streaked or unstreaked?
Then well, that's not a song sparrow, but maybe it is a song sparrow.
Streaked breast, thick bib.
Yeah.
Okay. Fairly bold streaking.
Song,
That is a song sparrow, and you can't see the entire tail, but it goes off the tail is long and actually the tip of it is off the picture.
And it goes like this.
It does not flip it. Oh, when it flies, you're absolutely right. When it flies, especially, it'll flip the tail. Yeah, that's right. And you can see that because the tail is so darn long, as opposed to this bird, which the tail is hidden, but it doesn't go past the barbed wire.
That's a savannah.
That's the savannah. Sandier looking,
Savannah short.
finer streaking, may or may not have a stick pin, and this picture doesn't show it too well, but there is a little bit of yellow above that eye on that bird. Okay. So there's your white-throated sparrow. Okay.
There's a
Great picture.
field sparrow.
Caught in the act. Yes, that's a field sparrow. The eye ring doesn't show as well on this one because He's filling his face with song, but the bill shows up. Pink bill. Okay. Pink bill, light color.
And he's the ping pong person.
What's that?
Ping pong, goldfish.
Yes, it's a ping pong ball. Dee, 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 dee,
We've
dee.
had a lot today.
That's a goldfinch in the winter, and it's a male, has a little bit of a hint. And this one will look like about 4 weeks later. They're starting to change now. So they're really interesting. And this is the final picture I want to show you.
At the Meadowlark?
That's the meadowlark. It's our eastern meadowlark, a declining species. Okay, we only have a couple of minutes, and I don't want to belabor this too much. I want to just say a couple of things. We started out in the first class talking about ecological succession. I have a couple of slides to go with that. And I talked a lot about the fact that we were looking at early succession stages in a lot of our field trips here, where we went to various land. We looked at the hedgerows, we looked at the fields, we looked at the scrub areas and so on. That population of birds overall over the country has declined by 40% in the last 50 years. Overall, there's a paper that's out and talked about that. I think I introduced it in first class. We've lost about a third of the numbers of birds, not species, but numbers of birds in North America over the past 50 years. And the worst, with almost a 50% loss, have been the birds of open country, the prairie species, the grassland species. A lot of that decline is prairie species that are out in the prairies where there are no prairies anymore. They're heavily agricultural. Nonetheless, those species have declined, but we're seeing a hint of that too. Grasshopper sparrows are declining, meadowlarks are declining, bob whites around here are almost gone. If you hear a bob white, it's probably rarer than an ivory-billed woodpecker here on the Eastern Shore. It used to be the bird of the countryside. So those habitats, which look scruffy and scrubby and all of that, nevertheless are really important. It also turns out, now that we can ban nestling birds with radio transmitters and follow their movements, we found that birds that breed in the interior forest, like a wood thrush, actually move to the edges and the edge habitats after they're fledged to feed, because those habitats are typically more productive in terms of insects and berries and things like that. So those are really important habitats. And while it's important to look at all the birds that have been declining and to do what we can to reverse them, those habitats in particular seem to be really critical. The thing about it here on the Eastern Shore is those habitats are closely associated with our agricultural enterprise. The landowners who own those lands and who, by participating in conservation reserve programs and other such cost-sharing programs, to preserve such habitats, or people who are particularly enlightened, they're exceptional, but particularly enlightened, like John Shaw, who go out of their way to restore grasslands. And for that matter, some of our parks, like the forward-thinking people in Oxford who do the conservation part, all of those are really important. But the scale of the decline of our grassland species is more than any park is going to solve. It's more than any Pickering Creek is going to solve. It's more than any Jonathan Shaw is going to solve. What we need to do to keep our bird populations as safe as possible is to work with the landowners so that the lands that they own are managed in a productive way that are also not only economically conducive to their income, but also productive in terms of wildlife. We can do that. Here on the Eastern Shore, I've done an analysis comparing breeding bird populations with that big decline, and we've lost maybe 12 to 13% of our species, but not 30, not a third. And the reason is we still are maintaining over the past 50 years, while we've changed the nature of some of our agriculture, we still live on one of the last great places on the eastern seaboard when it comes to productivity of our landscape and the diversity of our bird life. So my final parting message is it's really important that we enjoy the working landscape, that we get out on it, that we tell the landowners when we see them how important it is for them, and that we work on programs to help them cost share so that they can provide the kind of habitat that they need while maintaining a good agricultural enterprise. We lose that enterprise, we're going to lose a lot. And if you don't believe me, go to coastal Carolina, go to coastal South Carolina, go to coastal Georgia, and see what can happen. So if we're into conservation, to take care of the conservation of birds, take care of the conservation of land, and work along with the landowners, instead of being, as many environmentalists are, against something. Let's be for something to promote our agricultural enterprise. We'll all enjoy it, and so will our grandchildren and children after that. They'll benefit from the productivity of the land, and they'll also benefit seeing more birds.
So
And
when are you
that's
gonna go and talk to all the town halls?
What?
When are you gonna go and talk to all the town halls about that?
Well, I tried a bit. I'm some of those days are over for me, but
Yeah,
I did try very hard with the trap situation, and that's really unfortunate. We are working now with the town of Easton to try to promote some grassland preservation over on Poplar Hill on the Oxford Road. Those are all good, but they're small scale.
right, right.
Landowners own a lot more land.
So
It's-
how do you reach them? Just by,
You would get involved with them.
yeah.
You get involved with them, and you praise them
Just
when you
get
can.
involved with them, right?
Yes,
Like going
you
on
praise
the
them if you
properties.
can. We visited some private lands today by the roadside, parked our car, looked at the birds and met a couple of nice people who stopped when I was scouting. Some folks from Cambridge said, "You okay?" When I was down in trap, "Anything I can do for you?"
Uh-huh.
And I said, "No, I'm looking at the birds and enjoying your land." And they're very receptive to that sort of thing. They need to know we appreciate it, because we do. I don't. And that's the lesson from this course. We'll see what happens with the breeding birds next semester. Okay?
Very cool.
Thank you.